I knew that they were growing up a slope, so I could work the dog up the slope towards the covey, which I could hear calling, and that would mean the bird would rocket up and probably come over us. And we did this. We went out really early in the morning, got the covey located, got the dog working up the hill, and she came on point just ahead of me and slightly above me, and we flashed the grey wing, and the black sparrow just rocketed up and took it.
Hey, welcome back everyone for another episode of the Falconry Told podcast, and this will be the 10th episode and also the last episode that is going to feature falconers from Africa in this series. The next couple episodes are going to be bonus episodes from the Cape Falconry Club with falconers from the UK I was fortunate enough to be in the same place at the same time to meet with them and be able to record them and have a couple of conversations. So I really hope you all have enjoyed this series and have learned something from it and have enjoyed listening to them as much as I have, kind of listening back and editing these and kind of revisiting these conversations that I had while I was out there. So I want to give a special thanks, of course, to the Cape Falconry Club for the invite. As I've said many times before in this series, I can't thank them enough for the opportunity to help bring their stories out to the wider falconry world. So it'll always be a very cherished and memorable experience for me. And I also want to thank the Falconry Heritage Trust for their role in helping make this happen also, with helping to sponsor some of the airfare and other travel expenses that kind of came along with making this trip happen. So if you want to check them out, if you haven't yet, head to falconryheritage.org and please give some consideration into helping to donate to their cause and maybe supporting them in their quest to continue to preserve falconry and the cultural heritage surrounding falconry around the world for years to come. And also a big thank you to one of the continued newer supporters of our podcast, being Bobby Yaga Crafts out of Poland. If you haven't had a chance to check his stuff out yet, or haven't heard me brag many times over about the amazing quality of his handmade products, then I highly recommend you check him out. It's at Bobby Yaga Goshawk on Instagram, or the contact information can be found on our website also at falconrytold.com. It's all great stuff, and he's also got a lot of things that's in the works, and he's always constantly trying to refine his craft as well, which is something that I like very much in an equipment maker. So, as I said before, give him a quick shout out and give some time to kind of check out what he's doing over there. It's great stuff. You won't regret it. And this conversation that I recorded with Dr. Adrian Lombard was one of the last that I recorded while I was in South Africa. I had the good fortune to be able to spend a couple of longer car rides with Adrian and get to know him some, and we had a chance to kind of discuss different issues and things that go on in our respective countries, and I also got to pick his brain more about some of his medical practice and different aspects of falconry as well. So I feel fortunate to have gotten a chance to know him. He's a wealth of knowledge and has been a falconer for a very long time and has contributed a lot to falconry in South Africa, and has also been a part of the IAF and contributed back to the IAF a lot as well over the years. So I hope you enjoy this last conversation that I had with some falconers in South Africa, and hope you look forward to the couple of bonus episodes that are coming up with a couple of falconers from the UK that I recorded while I was there as well. So enjoy, and here we go. Well, at least we got your truck situation ironed out this morning.
Yeah.
How long have you been worrying about those fuses?
I wasn't worried until I drove out this morning.
Yeah, for everybody listening, we had to make a slight detour into, was it Series? That's how you
Series,
yeah,
yeah.
Series. Yeah. Down close to where the meet is. Yeah, we were out hawking this morning, and our guest for this episode saw that he didn't have particular lights that he needed. So we had to make a trip into town after we saw two falcons sort of fly this morning. But yeah, no, it's been, like I said, it's been a good week, and it's been a great week. I'm glad that we've had a chance to get to know each other some. And talking at dinner last night, I kind of discovered that we had quite a bit of other things in common with you, having your prior experiences in the medical field and things like that. And why don't you go ahead and just kind of tell everybody what some of your past professional history's been.
Okay. Well, I qualified as a medical doctor, and I'm a specialist in family medicine. I practice in a little town on the south of Cape Town called Falconry. I've been there for a long time, so it keeps me out of mischief. But you got to keep yourself sane as well. So I do falconry.
Yeah. Well, it's just kind of funny because when we were at dinner last night, and I just kind of chuckled because you were talking to me, and then you kind of pointed over at one of the other guys, and it's like, yeah, I delivered him.
Indeed.
Yeah, that's kind of what got that topic of conversation started. But I mean, so you're still kind of practicing to some degree then?
Yeah, I'm still fully engaged with medical practice. I'm a bit frightened to stop because I've watched a few of my colleagues retire and die. So.
Yeah, there was a neonatologist that I used to work with, and he was afraid to retire for that reason. And I think he's still, he was practicing for like 50, 60 years, and he just couldn't stop. He's just like, I don't know what I'll do with myself if I stop practicing. But yeah, that's kind of his concern too.
Yeah, I haven't been going quite that long, but about 40 years.
It's still a nice chunk of change.
Yeah.
Well, are you? You're not. Unfortunately, you're not really flying any birds and stuff right now either, right?
No, I'm not flying anymore. It's become a bit difficult for me. Time-wise isn't always an issue because I'm involved in all sorts of other things. And because of the growth of the city and various other things, I've lost a lot of the ground which I had to fly on close to home, so I have to travel a long way now. And so I just decided that what I would do is I'd let other people take the stress, and I would go out with the other guys flying their hawks, and it works quite nicely.
Yeah, and it seems like you enjoy just kind of taking your dog and letting your dog run for under other falcons and stuff too, right?
Yeah, so we're still working a dog. And it gets me out in the felt. It's great fun. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, like I said, this week's been pretty eye-opening in a lot of ways, and getting to meet so many different people, and now talking to two veterinary doctors this week on top of yourself, and there's been such a diverse amount of people here that have different backgrounds and careers, and as much as we can say, it's almost, we can't say it enough. It's funny how so many factors in falconry are just consistent around the world. There's always so much diversity.
Yeah, that's true. I think falcon is incredibly diverse. You'll find falconers from every walk of life pretty well. I have a little joke. I say, well, you can find any kind of person as a falconer, but you won't find a dull one. So, yeah.
Yeah, there is that. Yeah, everybody's kind of got their quirks.
They're all pretty nuts.
Yeah. We're all interesting bunch, that's for sure. But, well, and so, part of the reason why I was able to meet you over this week, and of course over the weekend, kind of was partially due to your, involvement in those, other things that you just kind of mentioned just now that kind of keep you busy. Why don't you just go ahead and kind of tell people what your role was, this weekend, like what kind of was going on with the conference, and, kind of start off maybe talking about that a little bit, and, some of the different roles that you've served in similar, capacities.
Yeah. So probably if I put it in context, I became involved with the IAF back in 2002, I think it was. And then a few years later, I became the executive secretary, and then I was the president of the IAF from 2013 to 2018, which was 2 3-year terms that were allowed. It was plenty. But during that time, we built up relationships with other organizations, and specifically with the IUCN. The IUCN is the world's largest conservation organization, so pretty significant organization, which we felt was something that we needed to be associated with. The IF has been a member of the IUCN, so it's an international member of the IUCN since 1996. But we linked up with Professor Robert Kenwood, and he at that stage was heading a group called the Sustainable Use and Management of Ecosystems group. And he had some projects in mind, looking at using software that's quite simple for people to manage, creating portals which can be multilingual. And I was looking for some conservation engagement which the IF could start to undertake, which wouldn't cost a lot of money because we didn't have a lot of money. So this sort of project was within our means. We found a project which was needed to develop a multilingual portal to try and assess what the attitudes and perceptions were of falconers and falcon trappers, people involved with falcons throughout the range of the Sacred Falcon. And that's a pretty tricky piece of country because it extends from China all the way through to Hungary. And a lot of the people there obviously don't speak English, are now maybe quite wary of speaking English. So be able to communicate with them in their own languages and to open contact with them is quite an achievement. And we teamed up with BirdLife International and with the Convention for Migratory Species, the Raptors MOU, who wanted this project done. And we managed to get it going. And through the links that the IAF had with people in those countries, we were able to get young folk involved doing translations, basically for pocket money. And we then got the portals up and working, and we designed it so that they could it could be operated from smartphones, because we found that most people in that part of the world have access to a smartphone. And then to try and get their opinions and views on stuff, we ran little competitions. So if you responded, then you were in the hat to win a prize. And that got us, it was actually remarkably successful. We got a lot of hits. We got a lot of people communicating right across pretty difficult part of Eurasia. And because the project was successful, we then looked at further projects along this line. And basically that has led to a memorandum of understanding between IF and IUCN. I've subsequently, I'm no longer president of the IF, and Robert Kenwood had done his 2 4-year stints with the IUCN as the lead of this group, and I took over from him. So that brings us back to what this conference was all about. And really, it's about the engagement of falconers and other sustainable users in conservation, and to look at ways that they can make a difference through conservation work. That was what the conference was about. Yeah.
Well, and what kind of headway do you think you all have been able, to make with a lot of your efforts, in recent history? I mean, what kind of roadblocks do you have to face, and just how much stuff do you all have to deal with in trying to? Yeah, I'm sure this is a kind of a somewhat very broad question, but I mean, what have been your experiences in dealing with a lot of these things?
Yeah, there's probably two sides to two ways to see that. From a falconer's point of view, because falconers are often very close to nature, they're involved in nature, they love raptors, that's why they do what they do, and they see what's going on in nature. They're often very interested in conservation issues. They're easy to engage in conservation projects. But they're also very good sentinels. It was the falconers who recognized, for example, that peregrines were disappearing from Britain. It was the falconers who recognized that small game and biodiversity was disappearing across Europe. And in fact, that started our second project, which was one to try and teach people how to increase biodiversity in agricultural lands. So there's a portal called PerdexNet, which is designed to do that in Europe. The other side of the coin is that people who know nothing about falconry and understand it as a hunting practice, or believe it to be a hunting practice, which it is, are often wary of falconers and uncertain about how to engage with them and whether they're good for conservation or not. So often conferences like this, where we can engage different people and bring them all together, are remarkably successful. You walk away as friends with common objectives, often plans to take things forwards, and bringing other role players together. So a lot of the stuff we try and do is to get falconers engaged with other groups, and engaging in conservation work.
And overall, I mean, over the multiple years that you've been kind of serving in these capacities and roles, I mean, how drastic of a change do you think there has been, from a multi-country point of view? I mean, like, how many countries do you think now take us or view us in a different light now because of a lot of these efforts?
Okay, so we've identified 90 countries in which falconry occurs, and we have contact with the falconers there, and they become part of the IF. The engagement with the governments, often similarly, governments and administrators are wary about falconers because they know nothing about them. The big game changer was when UNESCO recognized falconry as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity. That was the first 11 countries joined the element of the convention in 2010. Another 2 followed 2 years later, or 1 year later. And then now I think 24 countries. It's the biggest single element underneath the convention. Some other elements may involve 2 or 3 countries, but none of them involve as many. And so it's quite a big thing for falconers to recognize that we're part of a global practice. Sure, we have our differences, our different practices, our different cultures within falconry, but falconry itself is a global practice. And it's beneficial to conservation. It's good for culture. It's good for bringing people together, establishing understandings between them. We've been very fortunate in that the UAE has been funding us, specifically Abu Dhabi, and they've recognized the necessity to bring young people into falconry and to encourage them to practice falconry and to get together. So they've run a series of falconry festivals, and to these festivals they sponsor young people from all over the world to come and represent their countries and share their culture. And these festivals are really exciting events, because you have a whole crowd of young falconers, so people with a common interest, but very, very diverse, all engaging together. It's amazing. If you can't speak a language, you can somehow make yourself understood. That's led to some pretty good things, because we now have a youth group. We have the translators group, which has got a capacity to translate into a whole range of languages. I think we've got about the ability to do about 30 different languages in the IF, which is an enormous achievement. Any NGO which can offer multilingual translation is pretty unique. And these guys are enthusiastic, so they often do it for nothing, or they do it for the hope they may come to a festival, but it's often just for nothing. We give them an article which needs translating, say, from English to Russian, and they do it very cheerfully. So if you look at the IF journal, and you'll see little QR codes on every page, and there'll be 3 or 4 different languages. You can use your smartphone, you can get the article, in one of those languages, which makes the journal at very low cost accessible in multiple languages. Also quite an achievement. So having young people in, the ability to translate languages makes us able to do all sorts of different projects, and makes us very valuable to an organization like the IUCN.
Yeah, well, and as they say, Rome isn't built overnight. And, every little thing that you can kind of put in place, just to break down whatever barriers that do exist, I'm sure is always a plus.
Often it's just informing people what falconry is about and breaking down the preconceptions and misunderstandings against sustainable use, against hunting, against using wild animals to do stuff, and to realize that actually there's something really special and that people should treasure what falconers do, and to recognize it's a shared heritage amongst many, many people, and be proud of that.
Yeah, and I know we were kind of talking about this earlier today and even some last night, and you had to really kind of think about it for a minute. But, while serving in these capacities, I know you've had the chance to kind of deal directly with and also visit, a decent amount of countries. And, I asked you which one that you found kind of to be personally one of the more fascinating, countries that you had a chance to kind of experience, and I guess tell people what your answer to that was and why.
Well, I agree. It took quite a lot of thought because pretty well every country I've been to has been quite amazing. Just to perhaps interject, when you go to a country as a falconer, and perhaps this is something you personally are enjoying at the moment, you don't go in as a tourist and travel around in a tourist bus and look at the sights.
Of course.
You go in at ground level, you meet the people, you sit in their homes, you eat their food, you talk to people who you would never otherwise meet. And it's an incredible privilege. I've just been hosted all over the world by all sorts of extraordinary people, and it's been wonderful. I think I said to you that the country which I found most incredible was Pakistan, and it was a hard one to pick. You put me on a corner to try and pick one country, because there are just so many examples. But it's a country which we all have preconceptions about the people, about the customs, about the laws, about the way their government works, and yet you go there and you meet the people, and they're very nice people, incredibly hospitable. They have the same problems and so on that we do. They're very open, ready to engage, right from the ground up to government level. So that was a fascinating visit because I got once again into the homes and lives of people who one very seldom has an opportunity to get that close to. But also I met with government ministers and provincial officials and so on, who once again were incredibly open, quite prepared to talk to me, and to listen to what we have said. And the outcome of it was a memorandum of understanding between IEF and Pakistan to promote raptor conservation. And that MOU is taking work forwards as we speak. So, it's just been a very privileged experience, all these things.
Well, and like I said, I always like getting people's opinions, because part of the reason why I love doing this so much is because I do get to see for myself. Especially over the last handful of years or so, there's been a lot of things that have happened with me in my personal life that have really just kind of made me, really question, a lot of things and perceptions of different, cultures and different things. And so I like seeing for myself, what things are like, and forming my own opinion. And I do, in the process, I do like meeting lots of other people that do the same. And I've had the fortunate ability to experience a lot of different cultures, and especially in falconry, firsthand. So, thanks for being willing to share that. I know it's kind of putting you on the spot a little bit because, it really, once you've been to enough places, and, I know whenever I get asked certain things, it's hard for me to pick, and I'm sure I probably haven't been to half the places that you've gotten to go, but there's always really great things about each place that make it so hard to really, narrow down one particular, place as being like a favorite. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really using Pakistan as an example because from my point of view, going to places like Britain and the States and really getting to know the people from those countries and walking in their countryside and going to their homes gives you a completely different insight into countries which you otherwise hear about on the news, you see on TV, and it's a very different world out there. So, we're extraordinarily fortunate, but perhaps this is one of the important things about the globalization of falconry is that it does bring people from different backgrounds and different perceptions together and in a common practice, common goals, and it's actually quite amazing. This was my first experience with IF in 2002 when I went to the meeting in Abu Dhabi, and they'd brought people literally from all over the world, and I was sitting there talking to people from Turkmenistan and Korea and goodness knows where else, and I never thought I would ever meet people like this, sit and chat with them. It was just a mind-blowing experience, and it was really what got me going and trying to contribute and volunteer with the IF. Yeah.
Well, I mean, luckily there was something that was a catalyst for you, like there's always got to be some kind of spark that gets people motivated and interested in doing some of the, well, for lack of better words, crazy things we do in some ways, I mean, including falconry itself, which I'm sure we can talk about a lot of these other things all day, but I do want to go ahead and just branch into, the falconry part of your life and just find out, if you wouldn't mind, share with us how you got into falconry and what was kind of your, I don't know, the light bulb moment, I guess.
Okay. I grew up in Rhodesia, what is now Zimbabwe. And as a schoolboy, I had a neighbor, the father of one of my friends at school, who was in falconry, and I saw him doing this. Hey, that looks like fun, It just clicked. That was something I'd like to do, and he was very decent to me. He got me started, showed me how to catch a hawk and train it. The school that I was at was a boarding school, and they were also very accepting. There was a teacher there a couple of teachers there who were very supportive of me doing falconry. One was a very good raptor photographer, a chap called Peter Stain, and he wanted a kid who would climb trees and build hides for him and scramble around the bush looking for raptor nests. So I was well in my element there. And Peter and I are still friends today. He's getting on now. He's in his 80s, but it was a wonderful experience, and the school itself was supportive of me, and I got on and flew hawks there and never stopped. Later in life, I sort of realized that the bird which suited me best is the black sparrowhawk. It's a fairly challenging hawk, and the closest comparator, I think, is probably the Cooper's hawk, which is a bit smaller, but probably quite similar in temperament. So the black sparrowhawk is a very big sparrowhawk. It's not a goshawk. So it comes with management challenges and temperament challenges. But it's something which you've got to work at to get right. But it's a very exciting bird. It's for an individual falconer, it's a very dramatic hunter. It's very fast, aggressive. So eventually what I wound up doing was flying black sparrowhawk on guinea fowl. I've access to lots of guinea fowl, and wild guinea fowl are quite a challenging species to hunt. They're very different from the farmyard variety that people think about. So that's what I finally wound up spending most of my falconry career doing. And I found it very challenging, but also very satisfying. It's a nice thing to get right,
Well, and before I ask you some more questions about that, I mean, what other birds did you start with, and around the time that you started in, I mean, were all the was all the regulations and how, Zimbabwe like currently does things? I mean, were those already in place, or did you kind of come into falconry before a lot of those things were in place?
Yeah. So I came into falconry before those things were in place, and we were pretty rough and ready. We didn't really know a lot about the indigenous raptors there and what could be done with them. The first bird I flew was actually something called a lizard buzzard, and I managed to catch some pretty strange things with it. But that's kids getting into falconry and taking opportunities. And I flew an African goshawk and caught some stuff with that. But then the first bird that I probably properly flew was a lanner falcon. So I didn't really know how to hunt a falcon, but got this bird flying and going up in thermals and having all sorts of fun. And it was really exhilarating. And that what probably made me an addict for life.
Well, and did you fly any other species in between there too? I mean, I know you were practicing for a long time, but I mean, did you fly any like African hawk eagles or anything, or did you?
Okay, I did fly some African hawk eagles. So while I was a student, my time to fly hawks was pretty limited, but flying an African hawk eagle was something which could fit in, because it's a raptor which one didn't have to fly every day. And what we were doing there was night hawking with the African hawk eagles, which actually is a whole bunch of fun. They chase scrub hares, which like the brown hare, or I presume your jackrabbit, I'm not sure. And in the spot, they're a nocturnal animal. They come out at night. We get them in the spotlight, they run and jink. And it's quite a challenge for hawk eagle to catch them. So yeah, I flew hawk eagles like that. I also got them hunting guinea fowl, but they really are not as adept and as exhilarating hunting guinea fowl as black sparrowhawk. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny that you say that something like an African hawk eagle would fit more into your schedule and your life than like some of these other species. I mean, that's kind of intriguing. Was there a particular quality about that, or was it just kind of where you were in proximity to like being able to hunt, or things that kind of made it at that time a little bit a better fit for your life?
Look, I think if you want to fly a falcon well, or even a black sparrowhawk well, you need to have time and access to quarry. You've got to be able to get out pretty frequently, ideally every day, but at least sort of 3-4 times a week. Mm-hmm. And the hawk eagle flying at night on hares and so on, I didn't have to do that. So I could fit it in with my studies, maybe fly at weekends, 1 night a week, something like that. Yeah.
And they didn't require near the work then that the other species did.
Yeah, they're a fairly phlegmatic animal. When they settle into what you're doing, they don't require the maintenance that a black sparrowhawk or maybe a peregrine or something does.
So it'd be kind of like people that fly, like red tails and stuff. I mean,
and Harris hawks and so on. Sure.
And it kind of goes without saying. I mean, we have to say, of course, if you fly any species more, you're going to get more out of it. They're going to be better fit and all this kind of stuff. And, really you need to dedicate as much time as possible to it. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a general rule of thumb. There are species that it seems like you can, you don't have to fly quite as much just because of their temperament and stuff. So, well, I didn't know that about them. I think that, like I said, I've really been enjoying, learning about all this stuff, this week. And I mean, as far as the black spars, I guess we can kind of go back around to them then. I've had a couple of conversations so far this week about black spars, and one of which was from Zane, who is one of your esteemed apprentices.
Zane flew a couple of pretty good black spars.
Yeah, and but one of the questions that I had for them also, and I'll ask you what your opinion is. I know there's kind of a consensus, like, because you did make the comparison, and I was kind of assuming too that they probably are the most, like, I don't know, similar to Cooper's hawks, at least in temperament and things like that. Do you think that there's a lesser percentage of them that are probably suitable to be falconry birds just because of their temperament and stuff, as opposed to like other species? Because that's kind of a theory that some people have in the U.S. is, I mean, it's a lot harder to find a Cooper's hawk that that you can work through those temperament barriers and then the nervous nature and everything that. So, I mean, I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on that.
So that all boils down to management and training techniques. And I don't know that there's necessarily a proportion of birds that are bad birds and never going to be suitable for falconry. Certainly there probably is the odd one. But it's in that initial management when you take up a bird and you start working with it, and you've got to think every step of the way not to make mistakes. If you make a mistake with a bird, it becomes pretty hardwired and impossible to turn around. And it's particularly true with a species such as the black sparrowhawk. You've got to really think out what you're going to do and be ready for it. And I've tried various training techniques. I did make an imprint. I made a couple of imprints. One was an exceptional bird, but they really need an imprint. You need to hunt at high intensity. You need to get them hunting pretty well every day, at least 4 or 5 times a week. And you've got to really stay on top of it and work at it, and think out everything that you're doing with the bird. And I wouldn't readily make another imprint because I understand the sort of challenge of it to keep it good. And what I did subsequently was I learned how to do waking as a training technique properly. I think a lot of people think waking is some sort of way of tormenting the hawk and the falconer at the same time. It is not that. It's a very intense training period when you have an initial window with a new bird, which has no experience. You have about 72 hours to introduce that bird to everything. And it thinks that everything new is probably going to kill it, but it doesn't, and it becomes accepted. So you do in 72 hours what you would probably do during the maturing period of an imprint. And at the end of that period, you can have a bird which is pretty nearly bomb-proof. It has most of the good qualities of an imprint and none of the vices. And you can have a really lovely bird that you can fly at a good high weight and is pretty relaxed with most things, except things you never introduced it to.
Yeah. 72 hours that's not very much time. Yeah. to expose. Yeah. And what were all the things?
You go into that knowing exactly what you want to do.
Well, and that's what's going to be my next question.
Really prepared.
Yeah.
So you catch the bird up, and it's hooded, and you put all the equipment on it. And then the next trick is to get it to stand on the glove. Standing on the glove, and you have it right in the middle of your house, the dog sitting beside you, and the hood comes off for a second and goes straight back on again. And it got a little glimpse. What it saw didn't kill it, but back in the hood, and the hood's a safe place. So, we play a game as children called, catches and den, and you get in his den, you're safe. So you teach the hawk that the hood is den. When it's in the hood, no one messes with it. It doesn't get touched, it doesn't get pushed around. It's quite safe. The hood comes off and it sees stuff around it, and hood goes back on. And then very slowly it starts to relax. And then you introduce food. And then you have the dog sitting on your lap while it's eating the food. And then you drive around in the car with the hood on, the hood comes off, the hood goes back on. You take it to some friends, you do all of these things. And And slowly, during the 72 hours, it's learning all these things. It's eating now. It's sitting on the glove. The hood's coming on and off, so it's pretty used to the hood coming on and off. But it's learning very fast all the things that are around it, and nothing harms it. At the end of that time, you've got a bird that's pretty relaxed, and you can now start working with and training and introducing training techniques to. Yeah, that's what waking is in a nutshell.
Well, and thanks for sharing that, because I think there's a lot of different preconceived notions about the definitions of a lot of different things, and a lot of those are kind of, I think, developed just depending on who you talk to, and also like depending on what source you're getting them from also. So
if you think about it, waking was a technique developed by old falconers. They're often professional falconers. They knew exactly what they were doing with birds of prey. They were working generally with passage birds. They despised irises, and they developed these techniques. They knew what they were doing. The idea of keeping the bird awake during that period, not so much. I think it relaxes and it can calm down inside the hood, but it stays on the glove and with you for the 72 hours. You can take a nap in the chair, the bird's sitting on your glove, the hood on, you both take a bit of a nap, and then everything starts up again. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It is, but it's 72 hours of hard work to give you a really good bird.
Yeah, and for sure. I mean, especially, considering most, hunting seasons are anywhere between, like an average of 6 months, 4 to 6 months, depending on what you're hunting,
But you're going to have this bird another 6-7 years if you're lucky.
Sure, yeah. I mean, there's nothing says that it's only got to be, just for the one season. But so, yeah, I mean, you make a good point. I mean, it's 72 hours for, however long you're gonna have the bird, which is, I'm sure, well, hopefully going to be longer than 72 hours. but yeah, no, I mean, well, and like I said, thanks for kind of, explaining that a little bit more in depth, because like I said, you can get definitions or different interpretations of things, from reading a book, and I'm sure, depending on what source you're getting it from,
probably are different.
Yeah,
different
I mean,
takes on that, I'm sure there are.
Well, and I know, like, just from how it was explained to me initially, I mean, that's basically, it was more keeping the like what it sounds like, keeping the bird awake, and
there's perception that if you exhaust the bird, it accepts everything. It's a lot more than that, and it doesn't necessarily exhaust the bird. I mean, you want the bird to come out of this actually feeling that wow, this world's not so bad. So,
yeah. Well, cool. Yeah, I mean, that I think would be interesting for a lot of people to hear, and as far as the other aspects of I mean, was there any other species in there that you flew during your time, or is it pretty much mainly just those?
Well, I've flown another number of birds, not terribly successful. I'm not a great longwinger. Probably the problem there is loss of not having enough time and not having enough access to the right quarry and situations to fly longwings successfully. Maybe I don't have the temperament to be a longwinger. Sure.
I have noticed that about a lot of guys that favor short wings or accipiters. They, it seems like if that's what they favor, that's what they favor.
Nick Fox said that the Austringer is lonely and morose. I challenged him on it. He said, no, he didn't say anything of the sort. Yeah. We kind of have really selective memories sometimes as falconers too. Yeah, I'm sure that you could probably vouch for that as well. But, and just kind of going back a little bit then, and how you incorporated all this stuff. I mean, whenever you were studying, and I mean, were there any gaps that you had to take off, like whenever you were practicing, or were you always able to do this even whenever you were studying for your doctorate and all that kind of stuff? Well, as I said, I managed to do fly hawk eagles as a student. Yeah, right. But there was a big gap. There was a big gap for a number of reasons. I unfortunately got involved in a war, and then I moved countries, and I moved to the Western Cape, where at that time falconry was not permitted, it was forbidden. And I was trying to develop my career, so sort of bit the bullet and said, well, you can't do it here, so I won't do it, and I'll just get on with what I'm doing. And then I heard about Ed Utley, who lives in a little town not far from me, and he had imported some Scottish peregrines and was trying to twist the arm of our nature conservation people to allow falconry. And I linked up with him and tried to help him with this. We became good friends, and we managed to get, or largely he did, get falconry ban reversed, and then we negotiated a good policy with the province, and we've had pretty good experience flying hawks here for the last 25 odd years.
I'm glad that things worked out to where everyone here was able to get that privilege back. And, especially after talking with Edmund and some of these other guys that have been so instrumental in kind of being involved in what it takes to kind of, jump those hurdles, so to speak. I mean, it sounds like it was an incredible amount of work. And, I think that people need to hear, all the different hoops that you have to jump through to try and get something back that's taken away.
Well, that's the really difficult part. If you've lost it or if you didn't have it, it's difficult to get it started. We've got experience now from all over the world trying to reverse bans or change policies to allow falconry with a measure of success. But, our success here in the Western Cape depended also on people who were prepared to sit and listen to what we need to do and to be mentally flexible enough to accept that, these strange people want to do something, and is it going to be harmful to conservation? Well, probably not. Maybe it'll be beneficial, actually. And, what they want to do is actually not so bad. And so if you've got people who are prepared to listen and to have an open mind, you can achieve a lot. If you haven't, you've got a hell of a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really hard to convince somebody to do anything or kind of be open-minded to something whenever they're already just so against it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got to work to just change minds and try and get people to open theirs. We've been successful in reversing bans, pretty importantly in Denmark and in Greece, and we're working in Norway against pressure and uphill, against people with preconceptions who are not prepared to talk. But you get your way through. Falconers do a lot of good stuff. We can show what falconers in other countries are achieving. Australia has another point to note. I mean, here's a country which would be a wonderful falconry country. It's been closed. But there are little openings because people have been prepared to look at certain options with a reasonably open mind. And the role of falconers in rehabilitation, in truly preparing an injured or orphaned raptor to be releasable with a good chance of survival requires falconry practice. And so that's sometimes a foot in the door to show people that actually what we do is not bad. It's good. And there are benefits to it. So, yeah, we've got to keep working and not lose heart.
We try so hard to, show falconry in a good light and, around the world and continue to work, towards, just making sure everybody sees us in a positive light. But, and it is really, it's sad sometimes how, just one little thing in any facet of life can kind of turn a negative perception. So, hopefully the things that you all have been doing, will continue to work, and more countries that weren't previously accepting of it, will continue to be open-minded and allow, something. I mean, out of all these countries that you are kind of working on these things with, I mean, how many of them do you think were kind of previously open to falconry, but were kind of like how, it was here at one point, and then just like they allowed it, but then didn't allow it? And, or, I mean, have there been some countries where it's just pretty much always been, like not allowed?
I guess so there are countries around the world who have taken a stance which is anti-sustainable use, anti-hunting. Examples would be countries like India and Kenya, where the authorities are close-minded to the use of raptors and hunting, and they're closed-minded to any form of hunting. So it's very difficult to work when that's the sort of national policy, and it's not just hunting. It's not just falconry. It's hunting across the board, and that their conservation strategy is an anti-use strategy. It actually doesn't fit with conservation perceptions. There are important reasons why sustainable use is an important tool in conservation. That's recognized in the Convention of Biological Diversity. It was recognized by the, this is a big word, the Intergovernmental Policy Science Platform, so policy informed by science platform for sustainable use and biodiversity. They have recently released a global assessment of sustainable use of ecosystem services. These are the things people get out of nature. It showed how important use of elements from nature is across the world. 1 in 3 people in the world rely on something from nature, if it's firewood, food, whatever. And they found that broadly, recreational hunting was sustainable and was acceptable. So I know this is a big thing. This is a United Nations level finding.
Well, I'm sure I could keep asking you questions about all of just the different little nuances that go into, I mean, I find these things fascinating because I like kind of knowing what other countries have had to deal with and kind of work through, to have falconry in their countries. But I will probably go ahead and just switch gears then and, kind of go back to, some of your personal falconry again and kind of go to the part now where, I ask you basically, like, out of all the different experiences that you've had in all the years that you practice falconry, what, like, 1 or 2 memorable hunts, flights, or birds, everybody always kind of struggles with this, even if they have time to prep, I know, but I mean, what are some of the more memorable experiences or stories that you have in your time in falconry?
So I think often falconers try to set up what they see as an ideal flight or a flight which would be something they would like to achieve. You probably saw it this morning where we were trying to get all our little ducks in a row to fly a peregrine on grey wing up in the mountains over pointing dogs. And you saw how very difficult it is to actually achieve that goal. And when it all comes right and you get the falcon coming down from a good altitude over flush grey wing partridge, the dogs have worked well. It's an immensely satisfying thing to do. So for a short winger, there probably are similar goals which you'd like to achieve in terms of getting a flight, getting everything right. And one of the things I wanted to do with the black sparrowhawk was to get a bird that could catch grey wing partridge on the rise. And you saw how they flew. You got a little glimpse of how they flew this morning, I think. They sort of burst from cover and rocket off. And so your black sparrowhawk's got to also burst and rocket off. And I achieved it up here. I've done it a few times, but I really got it right one time, which is absolutely memorable. I knew that they were grey wing up a slope, so I could work the dog up the slope towards the covey, which I could hear calling. And that would mean the bird would rocket up and probably come over us. And we did this. We went out really early in the morning, got the covey located, got the dog working up the hill, and she came on point just ahead of me and slightly above me, and we flashed the grey wing, and the black sparrow just rocketed up and took it about probably 10, 15 meters above my head. It was, and it's one of these sort of heart-stopping moments which happen so suddenly and dramatically, and that's probably the short winger's goal. Short wing flying is a very intense and personal form of hunting, where long wing flying is something which spectators probably enjoy more.
Well, and I want to ask you real quick too. I mean, I know that you have run dogs and your falcon incorporated dogs in your falconry and so. I mean, have you pretty much always used pointers, or has it pretty much been exclusive to that, or have you used other breeds as well?
So I grew up in a home where my dad had pointers, and it was part of what we did. So I have a big soft spot for English pointers. Ed Italy, who he's mentioned earlier, imported some Brittany Spaniels to the Western Cape from Europe, and these were these sort of European-style Brittany's, which are smaller, squatter dogs than the American Brittany's. And they're very good for working in cover, and they're good for a short wing flyer. And he persuaded me, I think he persuaded me by giving me a dog, one of his puppies, which turned into a lovely dog and was a good working dog, pointed, probably not with the same solid pointing that you get from an English pointer, but very adequate and useful for an oar-stringer. And I have had a number of Brittany's, but now I've gone back to English pointers. I'm very fortunate to have given to me a very, very lovely dog who I'm having great fun running at the moment.
Well, awesome. I know we could keep going and going all day, more than likely, but I will. I'll let you off the hook here shortly. I know we have other things to do the rest of the day and everything, but I mean, I'm really appreciative though of you taking the time to do this, and like I said, I know that it's important to get some of these messages out, especially in regards to like the roles to be played with a lot of the conservation aspects of things and stuff too. But I want to end this episode on a couple of notes. I want to go ahead and ask you. I mean, and I've kind of talked some previously with a couple of the guests from this week, but I mean, for people that want to take a more active role, and I mean, you mentioned the importance of and the recognition of the importance of getting a lot of younger people involved in falconry and all that stuff. But I mean, I think there's a lot of younger falconers probably that may not know kind of how to get involved, with some of, the broader aspect of the conservation side of things, and also possibly serving roles in these different organizations and everything. So what would you tell them is the best way to kind of become more active and get kind of involved with some of these different organizations and take a more active role in a lot of these things?
Okay, so a lot of us just do our falconry and get on with it, and we rely on other people to do the negotiations and organize the permitting and the rights and so on, and we keep our heads down and do what we want to do. But it's important that people put their hand up and engage, and you start with your local falconry club and contribute. There's always work to be done. There's stuff that can be achieved within your local falconry club. And if you're interested in taking things further, it can grow from there in any direction you want to take it. Get them involved, maybe with the local bird club, see what conservation issues there are in the area, and that falconers could contribute and try and mobilize them. I mean, that's something you can do. If you want to go on through the administration of your national club or your provincial club or whatever, you can get involved with the IEF. The IEF's always looking for volunteers and for youth members. You'd be welcome to join the youth groups the IF. They're all online. They're chatting away busily with each other. They're not in any way sort of exclusive groups. So, you're welcome to go and ask to join these groups. Get involved, see what they're talking about and doing. So, there's two things with falconry, probably to try and improve your career as a falconer as far as you can, to do the sport as well as you can. But also to get involved in the other stuff, to make sure that falconry stays alive, that falconry contributes to conservation, so we don't just take out of the world, we put stuff back in. And that's a very important thing for every falconer to give thought to. Yeah.
And as far as, falconry in particular, I mean, what piece of advice would you like to leave, current and prospective falconers? I mean, is there a particular sentiment or, a thought that you think is really, important, or, I mean, what kind of, sentiment would you kind of, I don't know, like or what best piece of advice would you like to give, the current and future generations of falconers?
Yes, I'm probably the worst person to give any advice. But I think probably to say, look, falconry is a way of life. It's not just a hobby that you can pick up, do for a bit, go do something else. If you want to do falconry, you want to do it properly. If you don't want to do it properly, please don't do it at all. That's not any attempt to be exclusive. It's saying, look, you're taking on responsibility for another organism, which is a pretty fragile animal, which needs to be looked after properly, which is going to need a lot of commitment. And if you want to do this properly, you have to put a lot of time, thought, and effort. It's going to have a price on your personal life. It'll have a price on your professional life. And just recognize that at the outset. And if you're prepared to make those sacrifices, if you will, then go and do it. Because it's absolutely absorbing and rewarding and thrilling. But you've got to make that commitment. Yeah.
All right. Well, and is there anything else that you would like to, I don't know, either plug or, just at the end here? I mean, is there anything else that we've kind of left out of this conversation that you'd like to make note of before we end this? Or
I think we've been pretty broadly covered stuff.
Well, I wanted to make sure we covered as many bases as we could, and it's always so impossible to capture everything about people's lives in falconry and everything in a span of an hour. But I appreciate your time again, and thank you again, so much for agreeing to do this. And, like I said, I think it's really important for people to hear, especially from people like yourself who have served in, even the much larger capacities and in these different, even like worldwide organizations and stuff. And, I mean, people need to hear these type of things.
If I could do it, anybody can. All you got to do is stick up your hand and volunteer and get out there and do stuff. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Adrian. I appreciate your time. And you've got a glass of wine there that still needs to be finished. So
I'd like to get this microphone out the way.
Yeah. Don't worry. I'm going to let you off the hook soon. I'll get it out of your way, and we can have another drink and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks a lot.